There's no safe like Simply Safe. The old, and I barely want to call this old because this turbo still kicks ass, but it is the previous generation now. Same thing applies to our headers. We have learned so much, and while this is old and kicks ass, it is extremely heavy. And as you can tell, the welds, there's no cracking on that. The only thing that actually cracked on this is this ceramic coating, which isn't the type that we use normally. That is a lot of header, and they're almost equal length, whereas the new header, and you can already tell just the way I'm holding on to it, it is a lot lighter and it packs a much larger punch. So wait till you see just how the magic for this was made.
This is going to be one of your 4 pieces to your collector, right? You want to do a 4-to-1. I have 4 runners, so I want them all to collect into one. So that's it. After it's all cleaned up, cut all nice and whatnot, it's just a piece of straight before you cut it. So the way to actually do this, you have your piece of tube. You don't want to cut it too tall because when you cut it back to whatever size you're going to open up to, it doesn't need to be that small because this is kind of just like a 1-inch hole. So you don't need to do a tall, long piece. But cut it back, then you're going to put it in here, right? This is pretty much where you're cutting straight down. This is where your line is right here. Now you need to twist it 90 degrees. So since this is actually 2-inch tube, 1.5 pipe is like 1.9-inch OD tube. Tube and pipe are completely different. So be sure when you're doing this, if you're using 1.5 pipe, which is most likely most people will, you could follow these marks. But since I have 2-inch tube, it's 1/10 of an inch bigger. So I am going to actually mark about a degree over, because this is 0 right here, and this is 45, and these all go by 5-degree increments. So I have my 45 degree marked. Then I'm going to go ahead and twist it 90 degrees. Twist it over and just tighten her back up and go ahead and cut her again. Just a little bit cleaning up, fit in there nice and snug. I want to know what really gets my dick hard. This is the start of horsepower. The collector is the most important part of any header. Second is the length, and then third is whoever's making it. The collector is very important because this is how your engine's going to scavenge. One pulse comes in this way, and then with that pulse, it brings a suction motion, which helps bring the next pulse out. So I always stay between 10 and 15 degrees with the way I'm going to do this header. I don't have a lot of, I guess, room or exactly what I want to do with it, so I went with the 15-degree collection, which is fairly straight for the most part. This is 321. So the reason why we're going with thinner wall, which is a 065 wall, this is actually stabilized by titanium. They add a little bit of titanium in there, and that gives it the strength, and then also gives it the higher heat capability. So you see when I tack it, it's not regular 304 looking type stuff. You see, you have to be real clear, real clean, and you got to make sure that the argon gets over you, give it enough time to cool down. This oxidizes way faster than 304 will. I don't really care too much about the tacks. You know, these aren't too bad. I try not to get them too crazy. Before I go and I weld this all, I clean it up. This is going to collect to 3.5 inches, right? Just like me. I go ahead and I get a zip tie. I put it the other way, that way it doesn't lock. So that way I can move the zip tie in and out, you know, depending on circumference. I already got a 3.5-inch tube diameter, so that's exactly what this is. You got to do it square to it. That looks about yay. I got to cut back to this, and that will open up to 3 inches. I don't weld the outside first because the outside is what you see and what makes it pretty, you know. I just fuse the inside just to get these all mixed in together real nice and strong. And then I clean up the outside one more time, and then I go over and I weld it really strong so that way it penetrates through. But this is just a fuse, and then the outside is a strong weld. That way it's 100% penetrated and it is all good. I try to get it pretty close, and then I gotta bring these outsides in, and so once these outside gets in, the tube will be able to slide slightly in there or butt up perfectly nice, and then I get a nice weld off of that.
I've been driving a lot this year, and all these crazy adventures, but there's one thing that leaves a little hole in my heart, is being here. Now, I can't make sure that Isaiah is always working, and so thanks to Simply Safe, I can log into the cameras and watch him. Isaiah actually put a car in the lift so I can't see his little corner. It's wonderful, not just recording, you know, if something crazy is happening at the shop, but also being able to interact and check on it real time. And it's simple, that easy of a click, nothing to it. That is one of the many reasons I absolutely love how comprehensive SimpliSafe is. When you think of like a walkie-talkie, that's a very easy name that describes exactly what it does. SimpliSafe is about the next best thing to me because I am simply safe. It's comprehensive. Indoor cameras, outdoor cameras. I've got the temperature sensor. If there's a flood in the shop, if there's smoke in the shop, fire protection, all these different things all built into one system. One of my favorite things is that you can scale it. You can customize the system. You can start with this much and end up with this much, or just get crazy and do all of these different things. You've got a lot of different sensors and different systems that are all part of SimpliSafe. And if all of that wasn't enough to entice you, this is SimpliSafe's biggest sale of the year, and you can save 40% off of your entire system if you go to simplisafe.com/RobDahm. That's simplisafe.com/RobDahm. What do you got in your hands there?
Oh, little nice
That's
E-gate.
crazy, because I've got one too. Yeah.
Wow, twinsies.
Yeah.
Look at, wow, how cute.
They're kissing. Remember, Isaiah's already had these ceramic coated inside and out, but we are going to be using 2 of our power gates, the E-gates from Turbo Smart 60 mils. We got one of these on the 3-rotor. Now with everybody's ECUs coming up to snuff with controlling these things, they're incredible. And so we're gonna have 2 of these running on here. I'm gonna start with just one running initially, just to see how much does one flow on this engine. And then the second one, you know, is for business and getting the rest of that done. But so we're gonna have 2 E-gates running the boost for this thing. The boost lines I'm already seeing on the 3-rotor, choose your own adventure. It's up, over. If you want to have a little dip randomly there, that's all in your call. It is just the most linear, nasty boost curve. It's not even a curve, it takes the curve out of it. So straight lines. Just take the curve out of other things too. I'm on fire today. We are going to be using these, and we'll show you just how insane these are. But on a car like this, that's kind of easy to do.
What's up, guys? I'm kind of just here by myself, vibing, you know, getting some quality time with Bay. And I took all the header stuff off. I forgot how heavy that turbo is, first of all. That thing almost broke my back. Man, that whole setup is just heavy. And I'm really excited to make this new header. I'm also going to put this guy in. I didn't replace this guy because I didn't want it to burn up. This one's brand new. The other one, you can see it has some coloring right there. You see? Yeah, look at that guy. This guy's brand new, ready to party. Let me just show you guys how perfect. Jeez, that guy's badass. Old turbo, new turbo. This guy's just 20% better all across the board. This thing gets crazy hot. This is the ceramic stuff that Rob got this thing done in GM style, so look how hot that got. It actually flaked off in a lot of different places. The proper stuff will not do that. This guy got so hot that I melted one of the threads. Hopefully with the ceramic, it helps it out a lot. Other than that, everything kind of came apart pretty easy. T6 is a 3.5-inch pipe to come into the flange, so this guy right here is 3.5 inches, and T4 is 3 inches, and I got 3-inch stuff, but that's the biggest Vibrant goes up to as far as 321 thin wall stuff. I have stuff with the 304 thick wall that I will use if I can't source any at 321. This collector versus this massive collector right here, that alone is going to save a lot of weight. See if I could source some 3.5-inch stuff from, because it's going to be runners up to here, then it's going to be a V-band, and then it's going to be kind of like the same thing how this did. It's going to V-band and then collect and then go into the turbo, so that way I have a nice spot to put our 2 E-gates. This thing was built in a day and a half. This was 321 thick wall. It was really overkill. That's really not needed, especially when the 321 thin wall stuff, as we saw in the Corvette, this has survived dyno sessions, street abuse, 2 track days, and this thing is not really being supported by anything as far as the turbo, so I am very confident to use this on the 4-rotor now. And it is just doing phenomenal, because that literally sheds half the weight out of the car. Less heat is being retained because the metal is a lot thinner, and with the way that the 321 is working, it gets really hot really fast, but it dissipates the heat really fast, which I'm super excited for. I can't wait to hear this thing itself, because this runner, if I remember long ago, it's 1.75 inches longer than the other 2. This runner itself was like maybe 1/4 inch longer, so this all together was not equal length. I did the best I could in the time given, and it has been working perfectly fine. But
for that special sound. Hopefully it sounds better, because if not, everything I know means nothing, I guess. But it will sound even more amazing than she already does. Before I start putting this all together, I just wanted to take the time to show that this is a thick wall, 120 wall, 304 bend, 23.8 ounces, right? And this is the 321 stuff from Vibrant, you know, nicely packaged, 065 wall. And you can see the weight difference is pretty much half. So that is actually phenomenal. Titanium in it to stabilize it, and that just helps it with the higher heat and whatnot. That lives at a higher temperature than 304 does, even in this thickness, which allows us to use a thinner. My collector right here, I kind of beat it all out so that way it could fit onto the V-band. I'm gonna weld that guy up, and then as any header, as I always say, the hardest part of the header is literally the first runner, because the first runner dictates the rest of the runners, and obviously trying to get them equal length and whatnot. That will be the hardest part. I have a really good idea, and I've stared at this car long enough that I think I know exactly what I want. So hoping this kind of just flows, and this is literally my nature right here, laying pipe. I am using tube. This is tubing size, not pipe size. This is pipe, 1.5 pipe, which kind of almost matches up to 2-inch tube. That's in there a little bit. This isn't 2-inch tube. They're very slightly different. I think it's like 0.1 inch difference, but when you're talking about horsepower and flow and everything like that, 0.1 of an inch makes a difference in this case. Other cases, I don't care what she tells you. 0.1 of an inch, not gonna really do much, you know. It's all about the angles you get in there. But also, this is how you normally buy them. You have to buy pieces of straight and cut them or whatever. This is a bend, flows a lot better. I have less welds. It just looks nicer. I'm happier. Everybody's happier. Tube over pipe all day long. Vibrant literally sells this now. There's kind of no excuse for you guys. Today we are going to build, I don't want to say it out loud, but I'm going to say it out loud. The most badass header that's ever been built. And to start with that, you need to have your badass header flange. And just to remind you guys that there is, hold up, BRB, a whole ass drive shaft that literally goes right here. The header is very much dictated off of this drive shaft. That's why we had to move the whole diff and everything before. Hardest part of every header is doing the first runner, because there's 1,000,003 different ways you could go. And if you let yourself get in your head, you will stay there and look at it forever and never get shit done. I made the collector long ago. I opened it out right here to match this 3.5 inch, because it is a T6 turbo. T6 is 3.5 inch, so the V-band, look how cute and everything this is. I opened this up. This, again, we are going with 321 thin wall material for our runners from Vibrant, you know. This isn't really done a lot, but just like we did the C5, it obviously works. The sound's a little bit better. It retains heat, it dissipates heat. I wanted to put this in the center. I was able to remove this crossbar that kind of goes right here, and we realized that that's not as important as we thought it was years ago. This is why the old headers made all wonky like that. These runners are 12 inches each. So I made one which puts this where I wanted it to be in the center. Then I copied this piece, exactly all these, and then made it symmetrical. And you see I have a bunch of math and numbers over here. One piece is 5 inches, another piece is 4 inches, another piece is 3 inches, which makes 12 inches. So our runner length will be 12 inches long. All 4 of them have to be that. So now I have, which I think is the final runner. When you're doing stuff like this and you're making it symmetrical, it has to be exact, especially symmetrical. Symmetrical has to be even more exact. If you're doing other things, it could be off by like 1/4 inch or 1/16 of an inch, and it'll still fit. Obviously that's not what I do, but I want to make it exactly perfect, because I actually have OCD. Unlike some people, Kevin, I hope you're watching this, you do not have OCD the way I have OCD. To the point where this piece was this piece. It was off by maybe that much, and I had to remake that whole piece just to make sure that that fit. And that's exactly how precise you have to be in making stuff like this. Repetitiveness is just really hard. But I'm gonna show you guys how to do it right now. I have this piece. These guys make up my rotor number 3 runner, or my 2 middle runners, and these guys are gonna go just like that. These all add up to 12 inches. This one is 1.5 inches. This one's 3 3/4, and this one's 6 3/4, so that all adds up to 12. That's the same length that I need. That one's technically done. I need to repeat that. So I do a zip tie because a zip tie is going to grab the tube on a proper center line radius, but you can't do that and have a shitty cut because that looks like crap. And the zip tie will show you that it looks like crap, and you can see visually before you even mark that that's going to be a shitty cut on top of that. So what I do is I want to recreate this guy, right? And I look at the bend and make sure that it's all lined up, the bend. This guy needs to come down a little bit more. These guys are the same, but you can see I sanded this back up here a little bit, and I sanded over here back a little bit. So I just need to do a little bit to recreate this one, and that one would be perfect. This guy doesn't have any straight on it, so this is just a bend. This guy will fit anywhere in this bend, especially since I cut my cuts on center line radius, so that I don't cheater my cuts or anything like that. So that also makes it really, really easy to replicate. Match where the bend on the inside and the outside is, and I see that that's matched up perfectly. I go to my outer ends and I mark down. I will mark this top piece where it's at too, and this bottom piece. Same thing over here. And remember when you're using a Sharpie, because it gets confusing sometimes, especially if you're not paying attention. Cut to the line or delete the line. And I always delete the line. And cutting and deleting the line is like a 1/16 of an inch. When you're going for perfection, that really fucks you up. So now that I have my 3 spots marked, I put my zip tie on here and I zip tie it tight and make sure that that goes across that line fine. That goes across that line fine. And that goes across that line fine, and then I draw a nice straight line that I cut on. Same thing with this side. And so now if I delete this black line and delete that black line, I have this exact piece. There's barely any black line on there. That's all the black line I leave on there because I still have to face it out on the sander and some of the material gets knocked down. That's what I mean when I say cut the black line off. And so there we go, we have perfectly replicated pieces. This is the same as that, this is the same as this is the same as that. I'm gonna put them together and let's just hope I know what I'm doing, I guess. What I do is I have very, very small tacks. That way, if I need to break them apart, it's not all ugly and I have to grind it down and everything again. I have very small tacks, so when I break them off, I just sand the flat with the file and I can move it perfectly without, I really don't have very many issues when I'm tacking things apart because of my small tacks. This needs to rotate like a 1/2 degree just to make it perfect, so I could break this off with ease. And it's flat again. You gotta do it for both sides. Unless you guys weld and fabricate and stuff like that, you guys won't fully understand this. This is peak. It all comes together exactly how you wanted it to. I'm gonna go home and look in the mirror tonight and be like, damn, you're badass. I never really have those moments. I'm not gonna lie to you. Oh, that's beautiful. All I gotta do is hold the base and it fits in there perfectly like that. Let's go show them. How crazy is that?
Oh, God.
How wild is that?
That's like the AI that can develop like paintings and stuff like
Yeah.
that. That's advanced intelligence created that. Holy shit.
These are all 12 inches just like me.
That's incredible because the hottest moment is right here and you have the same basically angle off of all four, so they're all four getting the exact same treatment. That's incredible. Wow.
All right, well, it was nice knowing you guys. My job is done.
I'm gonna go ahead and start working on the next section. I don't recognize it as like a 4-rotor header. This thing's gonna be nuts.
Yeah.
This gives us all the accessory space right here for O2s and EGTs, all the same length, all out of the way of the drive shaft, all manageable. That's
Bluetooth, Wi-Fi.
Is it?
Can we look at the other one to compare?
You see that all that started to crack?
Oh, I didn't see that.
All the ceramic coating started to come off.
For reference, this is the other ceramic coating. This isn't the stuff.
That's the GM Chevy ceramic coating that nobody likes. Remember how shiny it was though?
Yeah, look at
it was chrome.
You had to lift from your gooch.
I can't. I can't.
That was a PR.
Yeah. I can't. Actually, my flange is the heaviest part.
Uh-huh.
Holy shit. I'm curious if the exhaust sound will sound different because of the pulses mixing sooner. We'll also have like an Inconel shield built around the drive shaft. And then same thing on the top side because this heat radiates upward.
Yep.
Now the turbo is going to sit somewhere up in here. So, you know, you wonder, I'm sure Isaiah's already explained, but why is this pointing down? But it gives you the ability to get the E-gates. They're big. They need to be out that way to get them easier. And then it lets him get the turbo single line up to the top.
The reason why it is facing down instead of just straight up is that 3.5 inch, that's a big distance. So you can only bend that to a certain extent. The reason why that goes down is that so the bend of it could bend properly to where it needs to go. Because if I have it right here and I'm trying to get right here, there's no way that the center line of that bend is going to come in there properly. It's just physically impossible. I found it and we bought it. This to you guys, this looks like a regular bend, right? Okay, sure, yeah. Regular bend, but this is actually 321 049 thickness. Normal bends are 065, 304, 065. This is 321 049, so it's just a little bit thinner, probably half the weight. And on top of that, look at this. He was able to bend it in tie radius. And so this is what I would have used, which are, you know, elbows. So this is like a 3-inch pipe. You do this, and look at, it's like off by like a 1/2 inch center line radius. So this is a tighter bend. It's gonna allow me to have more space and do more fancy trick ass stuff. And it matches my runners, which are 321 thin wall. So everything on this header will now be thin wall. And then coming out of there would be 2.5 inch stuff, which I also have 321 from Vibrant. Vibrant just didn't have anything 3.5 inch, so I had to search around and call a bunch of different people. And luckily, Reed Washburn over in Newport Beach has some exotic stuff. Luckily, he was able to sell these to me, but these are not cheap. I think these were $200 a bend.
Jeez.
Yeah. When we're looking for performance and looking to shed a bunch of weight, and if it's for the forwarder, you know, we're getting the best that we can. So really, really excited to use this stuff. This is just a bend, and this is a bend with straight legs, you know. Okay. 43.4 ounces.
Wow.
This is 1 ounce more, and look at how much more material that is. So much better. So much better. I'm gonna finish welding up the runners. Have one done right here. You got my nice penetration in there and everything. It looks all good and cute, and I'm gonna finish welding up the runners, and then we'll move on to that next step. I just did it, and I have 2 more to do, so I was like, wait, let me explain, because the pipes get all crazy and wild, and even on more complicated headers, kind of hard to get these welds like in between, like to weld that nice, or to weld this in here nice, or to weld even in the collector. It's really hard. So I make sure one runner stays on there, or all runners stay on there. That way this stays in the same spot. And then what I do is I take the runner itself out, because these aren't even tacked in here. These are just forced in here because it's such a perfect fitment. When you don't have perfect fitment, it is a lot harder. But as long as you tack it and you're able to break my tacks off. And that's why I do these very, very baby tacks. These 2 tubes need to be welded, but I'm gonna show you guys how you take them out and weld them with these. It's already kind of loose, it's all into place, but there's only one small tack holding in right there, so I just do the, and it comes out. So like this, I'm able to put my purge plugs in here. I run my gas to the other side, and then I can weld it perfectly fine, and then it's gonna stay the same shape, and then I just, you know, go ahead and throw it back in there, and then I could weld it all the way back in. So there you go. You see how this all stood in place? Here we have metal, and I got this piece because I wanted this piece to be like my ultimate header heat sink flange made out of aluminum, which transfers heat really well. But I got this big because this thing could do the 6 rotor flange, the 4 rotor flange. I had another RB flange. I wanted to have a bunch of different holes for a bunch of different header patterns that this thing would just be ultimately used for. Right here, I have my holes set out for the 4 rotor bolt holes. I'm just gonna drill them out, thread them, and then the header will come onto here, and I could weld it properly, and this will take a lot of the heat so that way the flange doesn't warp, and that way Rob doesn't have to somehow fit the header in there and do all his hocus pocus stuff. And it makes for a colder weld, so that way you get less color because this transfers a lot of the heat. What I would like to do in the future, somehow have one hole come all the way through the center of this, that way I can run gas and drill small holes into this and have gas come in through here. Since that would be way too complicated right now, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this guy over here, block these 2 guys off. Since this isn't welded down here, gas will be able to escape from here, and then gas will be able to escape from here. And then once I have these 2 welded in, I'm going to put another one in, weld it in. that's how easy it is, you know, just 1, 2, 3, 4 when you have 4 rotors. I put a lot of work and effort into making the weld look nice and to making sure that the weld is strong and penetrated, so that way when all that heat is coming through, if you have a bad weld, around the weld would technically heat up less than the metal, because this has been heat treated pretty much. But when you weld it perfectly right and everything goes smooth and you have fully penetrated weld, it's all the same metal. A lot of work and effort that goes into the welding this right, especially in this area, because this is where everything collects. And let's look on the inside. It's welded. I still gotta weld the inside of it, just so that way I could sand it down really smooth. But this big ass block is really, really warm right now. It's welded like a dream. Badass flange, badass manifold. Here we are. This is the header, and there's still more to the header that needs to be done, but this is the hard part. Dry shaft goes through here, collects through here. It's gonna go somewhere right here, and the turbo's gonna be up here somewhere. When I tell you guys I haven't been this proud to make something in a long time, I am very, very serious. This is probably the best header I've ever done. Super simple, but there's a lot of meaning to this. Rob CNC'd this flange for me. It's made out of pure love. Equal length, 12 inches, all 4 of them, perfectly symmetrical. Thin wall, 321. I'm gonna do a little compare and contrast real quick. This is literally 3 years ago we made this header. We live and we learn, and this thing was built in like 2 days. She served her purpose very, very well. Very curious as to how much this weighs and how much this weighs. 31 pounds. I would say 12. Damn.
You're good.
Yeah. Damn.
That's a little bit more than half so far.
Yeah, that is more than half, and we have a thicker flange. That's in itself is already a lot of weight saved. My worst nightmare is, you know, making sure she fits. And with the fender on, it's kind of a pain in the ass, but Literally in my dreams, that's how it looked. Drive shaft has all the space in the world, like the turbo's gonna have all the space in the world. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I do.